Okay, welcome to another edition of Jazz Postgame. The Jazz won tonight in Salt Lake City against the Orlando Magic, 113-99. Jazz's defense really showed up. Let's talk about it.
Jazz Smack, your source for information and analysis about the Utah Jazz and NBA basketball. Jazz Smack is a community for passionate Utah Jazz NBA fans.
So the Jazz really defended tonight, which was really nice to see, and it was kind of a combination between the Jazz defense and Orlando's offense. Orlando right now is missing a lot of key pieces. Jalen Suggs, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope in the backcourt, their starting backcourt, both out. I mean, the Orlando Magic are playing Jet Howard significant minutes right now, and that is not a good thing for the Orlando Magic. And obviously they've also had all sorts of injuries this season with the Wagner brothers have both been out some. Mo Wagner is out for the season. They've just struggled with injuries mightily. Paolo Banchero has missed most of the season. So, I mean, they're trying to piece their offense together. So the Jazz, but still, the Jazz have struggled on defense immensely this season, and holding Orlando to under 100 points at home is a positive thing. So I think this was a good game for the Jazz.
I do too. I mean, one, it was great to see our key players playing two games in a row. So even though we're trying to lose, at the same time, it was really good to see our players. And, Orlando did have Paolo and they did have Franz Wagner. So they had some of their really, some of their key players, their starters there, and that was good. But you mentioned this in a prior episode, is that coming to Utah has always been tough. Denver and Utah are very difficult places to play for opposing players, and I think Orlando was part of that. I mean, I think you come in here, and the Jazz have a massive home court advantage when you come here. So, yes, they shot poorly. A lot of their players were missing, but I also think that the Jazz played good defense, as you said, and I think that our home court advantage really helped.
Yeah, the Jazz and Denver, clearly, they're the only two teams in the NBA with an inherent home court advantage. And that elevation is that advantage, and that you just can't replicate that. Nobody can replicate that. It's always been the case with the Jazz. They've always been really difficult to beat in the Delta Center or Energy Solutions Arena or whatever the arena happens to be called. In the old days, obviously, Salt Palace. So it's just a really difficult place to play, and Denver's a difficult place to play as well. So that certainly feeds into it. And Orlando missing all their starting players also feeds into it. It's just it's simply a difficult situation for an opposing team, especially a short-staffed opposing team such as Orlando was today. But still, I mean, the Jazz have struggled so much on the defensive end this season. Any positives where things are going their way, I think, is a good thing. So tonight, awesome night.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do have 11 wins for the season. We can look at the standings. Actually, I don't think the standings are updated to the end of the day, so we probably show 10 of where we stand. So we had a win. That's not great in our standings in our drafting, but it was fun. I mean, honestly, I think our team played well. And this is like a question I have for you. So if we played our team, assume health, because none of us know if there has been real injuries or not, right? You don't know. In the guys that we're playing. But if we played our full team all year, what do you think our record would be? We're 11 wins now. What do you think our record would be?
We'd clearly have more wins. I think we'd probably be in the high teens.
I agree with you. I mean, I agree with you. Now, we're not going to be a 500 team, but we got some great players, right? And we know that. Lowry struggled this year, but we have some great players, and we would have a better record. We're not going to, like this last game we lost to Minnesota. Somebody made the comment after the game, well, it kind of shows that the Jazz actually are not good. Well, I'm not suggesting they're good, but I think they would have another 6, 7, 8 wins if we played them the full year, like the full roster, which means we're closer with that team than people think we are.
Yeah, I think the Jazz could be fighting for a play-in situation if they were a complete healthy roster up until this point, and they were actually trying to win. I mean, like I've always said, I think if Jerry Sloan were coaching this roster, I think we're in the play-in. I honestly do believe that. Like, I don't think there's any question about that. I think the Jazz have enough talent that they could be in the play-in, just because the Jazz would obviously run a different offense and be more sound on defense than they are, and wouldn't just jack a bunch of threes. So just running the regular stuff, and I think they'd be in the play-in. But that's not what the Jazz are obviously shooting for right now, and obviously Hardy is not Jerry Sloan, and those are two big differences.
Yeah, we'll have to talk more about Jerry Sloan in another episode, because I actually think Jerry Sloan would struggle in this era. I don't disagree with you that our defense would be night and day different if Jerry Sloan were playing. But where I think Jerry Sloan would struggle, I don't know, like the one, why are people shooting more three-pointers now? On stats, on effective field goal percentage, it's better than shooting two-pointers, right? That's the reason teams are doing it. It's not that they're just, oh, let's just gun up a lot of three-pointers. It's because people have finally done the stats and say, that gets you more points and more efficiently effective field goal percentage. Do you think Sloan would adopt to that? I'm not sure he would.
I think he started to with Memo and that team. I mean, Memo was shooting a lot of threes. So I think he would adapt. I don't think Sloan's going to ever shoot 45 threes in a game. And if I were coaching, I wouldn't either. I'm not a fan. I dislike it. I would shoot better three-pointers and fewer of them. And also that gives you better floor balance as well, getting back on defense, because you don't have all these long rebounds to run outs. And the Jazz struggle mightily with that. And so I think the Sloan would have a better record, and I think that he would transition. That's my opinion of it. That's how I see it anyway.
Well, I don't think people should give up on the two-point shot, but I will say this, is that it started with Billy Beane with Moneyball, in Major League Baseball, is you start to look at the stats and see what translates into wins and effectiveness. And the reason teams are shooting more three-pointers now is that you shoot a higher effective field goal percentage than shooting two-pointers. Now, I think you and I both think there's something really screwed up about the way it's structured, that people are incented to do that. But that is the reason. And people have looked at the advanced stats and said, look, this is what it's going to be. And it's not fair to Sloan, because we're both like the biggest Sloan fans. But I honestly think he would have trouble adjusting, because so much of his game was like pick and roll, pound it down low, etc., which we used to both love. But we can't deny the stats and the effective field goal percentages. So we'll have to do more research on that, because honestly, I've thought a lot about this point. Is the Jazz used to lead the league in field goal percentage, and I was really proud of that. But when they led the league, they were like 50%. And if you look at the effective field goal percentage now as of teams, it's much better than that, because they're shooting more three-pointers. And so that's like my point. And yeah, Sloan probably would have adapted, but I do think he would be probably at the bottom of the league in the number of three-pointers he shot.
Yeah, and well, there obviously we have to take into account all the rules changes and stuff too. I mean, it's vastly different. There's none of the physicality anymore. The physicality has largely been removed from the game of basketball completely, on both college and pro. It's not like it once was. And obviously there's no illegal defense and all that stuff anymore. There's just so many differences. I'm not sure you could actually ever even... It's just very hard to compare eras simply because of rule changes and the way it's refereed.
Yeah. I mean, there was hand checking right before, where A guy like Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was hand checked constantly. You imagine Michael Jordan in today's game with no hand checking. I mean, he would dominate, even though he wasn't a 3-point shooter. But a guy like Michael Jordan, I have no doubts that if he was playing in this league, he would become a much better 3-point shooter because I think he would work on it until he did. So I think he would adapt to the game. So I agree. It's really hard to judge, but I wondered that about Sloan because he was such a guy stuck in his ways. I don't know. I don't know how much he would have adapted to era. I think that Sloan had his way, and that was his way. But it's hard. It's speculation. We don't know.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about so the Jazz Clippers trade today. Yeah, and I made a video about this earlier, and I really like this trade. I like it for both teams, actually. I think this helps both teams immensely. And Drew and Patty Mills, obviously Patty Mills was simply here for mentorship, but Drew is obviously a positive player on any roster. That guy should get time. He can contribute. He contributed for the Jazz. He's contributed to other teams that he's played for in the past, and I certainly think that he's going to contribute to the Clippers. And he's by far and away the best player of the four players included in today's trade. But the thing about the Jazz is it opens up playing time for Filipowski, seemingly. So Filipowski will probably get some more time, and that's a big thing. So the Jazz obviously saw some bright spots with Filipowski's play, and this gives him the opportunity to get on the court. Now, a lot of this is up to Hardy and the way Filipowski plays, but it's possible that this actually opens up time for him to play more. And the other thing is, I mean, from the Clippers standpoint, this gets him below the salary cap, the tax threshold at least, and gives him some leeway to try and make some other moves before the trade deadline. So I think it's a win for both teams, and the second round pick for the Jazz too is obviously more draft capital, and that's a massive thing for the Jazz currently stand.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to emphasize it's a 2030 second round pick, no protections on it. And it's for the Clippers, who could very well be terrible in 2030. This is one of those teams that's given away all their draft picks, all their swaps, etc. So this team could be absolutely brutal in 2030, which means we may be picking up basically a beginning of the first round second pick for Eubanks. So I think that that's great. Now, we don't know how much cash is coming back. And PJ Tucker is, I think, $11 million a year. Eubanks is 5.5. So I hope we're getting enough cash to cover that delta, because honestly, PJ Tucker's going to be cut too or bought out, right? So he's not playing right now for the Clippers. I don't think he's been there for 3 years or for 3 months. So he's not going to play for us either. The other thing is, though, like I had exactly the same reaction as you for Eubanks or for Filipowski. What I worry about, honestly, is Mo Bamba. Mo Bamba is 26-year-old. Do you think he's going to get a lot of minutes? Like, what do you think Hardy's going to do with Mo Bamba?
Well, I'm not sure what Mo Bamba's contract situation is, but he might not be on the roster either. Maybe the Jazz buy him out. I mean, obviously, the thing about the Clippers is they have Ballmer as the owner, the wealthiest owner, I think, in all of sports. Mm-hmm. And a few $1 million to him is obviously irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. So the Jazz may have demanded that they cover those two contracts in terms of the buyouts. And so that may be part of it. I'm not sure that Mo Bamba's on the roster. I'm not convinced of that.
And none of us know. But my question was, if he is on the roster, what if Hardy plays him? Because we've both seen that. Is that Hardy does seem like he's bought in now. Not bought in, at least told by Ainge and Zanuck. You've got to lose. But if he's not, we've seen that where he's a young coach that he cares about his record. And if he cares about his record, is Mo Bamba going to get you more wins than Filipowski? Maybe right now. I don't think Mo Bamba's like a hero, but he still may be a better player right now than Filipowski. So that's my only fear with it. Honestly, that's my only fear with it. I hope it means Filipowski is playing a lot more because I want to see. He had a great pass tonight. Who was it? Did he add like a backdoor to? Was it Collier or
He had
somebody?
more than one. Yeah, he had several. He really passed the ball well tonight. Yeah, they're
Yeah,
really good. Yeah,
yeah,
I want to see him play too. I don't want to see Mo Bamba play. I hope that they buy him out and hope he's not even on the roster. I don't even want that guy on the roster. I mean, the Jazz have enough other guys that they can. I mean, I'd rather have Harkless on the roster than Mo Bamba.
I agree.
Obviously, not the same position, but still, I don't want Mo Bamba on the roster. I watched that guy in Orlando. Obviously, he played, I think, 1 year at the University of Texas, but I don't want that guy on the roster. And who knows what Hardy's going to do? I mean, he was playing Patty Mills at times, and I wouldn't have played
Yeah,
Patty Mills at all. And there's no way I play Patty Mills there's no reason to play Patty Mills. But he played Patty Mills, so who knows?
yeah. And don't you think when he brought Patty Mills, that was like what he told Patty Mills, like Patty, you're not going to get any time, but you're going to make $2 million a year to sit on the bench and help the young guys.
Yeah.
That's a great deal, right? I mean, that's a great deal for anybody at the end of their career, and hopefully Patty Mills, for his sake, can milk that same thing for another 3 to 4 years, right, till he goes into coaching. But then he gave him some time where he was playing, right? I mean, he was playing over Collier and some of these other guys that we should have played. So, yeah, you want to look at like just not go through the whole box score, but look at a few elements in the box score. But I was really jazzed about the trade today too.
Yeah, it was great. So I think the standout in tonight's box score is I think John Collins really played well again, made shots at a really high rate. Obviously he got I mean he had some lobs and dunks and whatnot, so that really helps. But really played really, 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 really good basketball. And Isaiah Collier again played really good basketball.
Mhm.
And Filipowski, uh, he passed the ball really well. He didn't make any field goals, but he passed the ball really well. So those are my three guys that I really thought were exceptional in this game. And what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I want to point out Colin because he Colin started 0 for 5 from the field and didn't shoot the ball great this game. But I made the comment the other day that Sensabaugh like started poorly and then didn't get enough minutes to shoot out of it. I think that Colin today is the perfect example that you go through these streaks, right? You start poorly and then you start hitting shots, and you've got to let guys like you look at like Sensabaugh's minutes today, like 14 minutes. Now maybe it was because he was trying to get Jordan some minutes like for tradability. And look, if that's the case, great, right? Because that's what we want. But I do think you have to give these guys enough consistent minutes so they can shoot themselves out of when they're having a bad night. And I think Colin was at like he turned it around. He didn't have a great night shooting, but he turned it around. The other thing I'll say, and we're going to talk about this in a minute about Keontae versus some other players. Keontae does get to the free throw line. I'm actually amazed people follow him when he's like driving and he's doing like these running shots. I'm amazed because he's not like getting past anybody, but people do follow him and he gets to the free throw line. So that's a real strength of Keontae. I like maybe in scouting, people catch on to that. Like, I don't know, but he does get to the free throw line. And so give him credit for that. Like Colin went 9 times tonight. He went four. Right, four. Yeah, 4 for 4. So that's a skill that he has. And who knows in scouting if they get you onto that. But for now, I think it's good that he's getting, and that's a skill that we should acknowledge.
Yeah, I mean he definitely has the Harden type thing going for him, where he kind of
Yeah.
leans. I mean, it's the same thing, not to the extent of Harden, but he does exactly the same. He does pretty much the same thing. He kind of leans into people and then kind of flops, and he gets to the free throw line. It's working for him. I'm not saying I agree with it, but it is working for him.
Yeah, but it's like sometimes he's just driving towards the hoop and he's not past the guy. It's not like Colin where he's got around the guy. He's not past the guy, and he's just like going to go up with the shot, and for some reason they foul him. Or maybe he goes into people in his drives that's how he's getting the foul called. But whatever he's doing, he's getting the free throw line. And let's give him credit for that, because I hope it continues for the sake of his career, because I think he needs those free throws. Like, that's like one of his best traits. But is there anybody else I wanted to like point out in the box score? Walker Kessler, 15 rebounds. Wow. Right.
Yeah, he got off. I mean, he got a ton of rebounds to start the game in that first half, and then he was obviously in foul trouble too, but he still played. The 33 minutes was great.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Walker is he's going to be a special player. I mean, he is already, but he's going to be a special player. The guy just has so much ability. Like, I know he's your favorite player. He's not mine, because Colin's my favorite player. But I am incredibly bullish in Walker. And honestly, I've been incredibly bullish since year one. Like, some of the things I saw in year one, like, wow, his blocking with both hands is just fantastic. One other thing. So Paolo, 4 for 19, 0 for 6. Wow. That's a Keontae box score.
Yeah, in all honesty, in my opinion, I still think Franz Wagner is the best player on that team. Like, if you ask 9 out of 10 people that follow the NBA or even in the NBA, everybody's going to say, 9 out of 10 are going to say Paolo, but I don't think so. I think it's Franz. I think he's the best player on that team. He's really good defensively too. Really good.
18 for 23 throws for Franz.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we have to look at his efficiency too to just see, but that's a great line for him. It's going to be interesting with Paolo, because he's a big, strong guy. But honestly, I don't really see anything exceptional with Paolo. Not really a great shooter, not overly quick, just big and strong, right? So he can do a lot of different things, and he's a very good player. Don't take it. I'm not taking anything away from him. He's a very good player. But you may be right. He may not be the star on that team.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Orlando has a lot of young talent. I mean, obviously we've talked about the people that are missing tonight. And Mo Wagner's not exactly a young talent. I mean, he's Franz's older brother, but Mo Wagner is a valuable piece coming off the bench, really valuable. That guy's a good player. And they actually have 3 guys on the team from the German national team, the Wagner brothers. And they also have Tristan da Silva, Cody's former teammate at the University of Colorado. And I think that guy's going to be in the NBA for years to come. I think he'll end up being a solid player. So that team has a lot of young talent. They got a lot of high draft picks the last few years. Anthony Black, I'm not sold on him. But the other guys, I mean, Jalen Suggs has turned himself into one of the better defensive guards in the NBA. Even though he's still a struggling shooter, defensively he's really good. So that's a tough team.
Yeah. Yeah, Suggs got a massive contract, and honestly, I wonder if that was an overpay. I've heard a number of people say he's such a great defensive player that it's worth it, but I honestly wonder with Suggs. But we'll see. He's a Gonzaga guy. I'm rooting for him. So I think Anthony Back is a great segue to talking about how Keontae compares to some other players. And Stephen Castle's getting all of these accolades. Like, I read this, that, the trade potentially between Sacramento and San Antonio, like the big issue is, you can't see who the player is on the screen, that the big issue in that trade is that Sacramento wants Stephen Castle, and San Antonio is really bullish and they don't want to give up on him. So let me just tell you first, just Anthony Black. So I'll read off Anthony Black's stats this year: 25 minutes a game, 40.8% from the field, and this is his second year. 26.7 from 3, 74 from the free throw line, 2.6 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 2 turnovers, 9.1 points a game. So it's only a year and a half for Anthony Black. He's a big, oversized player, but let's face it, those are not fantastic numbers. And 26.9 from the 3 point line your second year, real warning sign of whether he's going to be able to be an effective player. But we'll see. We'll see over time. So here you can talk about these, but what I did on here is I wanted to be fair to Keontae. So I'm like, look, we've kind of jammed on Keontae, kind of his style and his cockiness, et cetera, the things that really irritate. But why don't we look at him relative to some of these other players, like all the accolades for Castle, like, oh, we can't trade Castle. So how did Castle first compare to Keontae George?
Well, I mean, the field goal percentage and stuff is similar, and he has a worse 3-point percentage. The assists, Keontae's better than him in assists, but the assist to turnover is roughly the same. So that's in defense of Stephen Castle, though, the one thing that he does is that dude defends, and Keontae's one of the worst defenders in the NBA according to data. So I think that's the huge disparity between those two guys at this particular point in time.
Well, just let me read out the numbers because not everybody's looking at the screen. So field goal percentage between Castle and Keontae George. Castle is 40.3 through this year. Last year, Keontae was 39.1 throughout the whole season. 3-point, Castle is 27. Keontae is 33.4. So Castle's significantly worse than Keontae. Assists, Castle is 3.6 and Keontae was 4.4. Roughly equivalent minutes, played. Now, one thing in defense of Castle, when you have Chris Paul on your team, he's the one playing point guard most of the time. So I do think that their roles were different on the two teams, where Keontae had a lot more opportunity for assists than Castle did. But still, if Castle's going to play point guard, assist numbers are not fantastic, right? I mean, they're not great and standing out. So, like in looking, so your point is Castle's a much better defensive player. Well, agreed, right? I mean, you can't, given that Keontae may be the worst defensive player in the NBA that gets minutes, that's not an overstatement. You're saying Castle's a great defensive player, but taking away the defense, do you think, like, Keontae's numbers, I think they look better than Castle's numbers if you take away the defensive aspect.
Yeah, looking at this, I do agree with that. Although eyeballing the players on the court, Stephen Castle is certainly a better passer than Keontae George. He's a much better natural passer. Keontae George isn't a natural passer at all. And so from a passing standpoint, and I don't think Stephen Castle is a point guard. I don't think that's his long-term fit. I think he's going to play the two. And obviously Keontae, he's not a point guard either. He's going to end up playing the two or the combo or something. He's not a point guard. But from just these numbers themselves, looking at it without factoring in all those the eyeball test, yeah, it's favorable to Keontae for sure.
Yeah. And I think the eyeball test is important, but I also think the eyeball test can be deceptive because, over time, if you look at stats, if somebody's stats don't match what you think that they're doing, then maybe you don't, look, Castle's only played half a season, so I don't know if he's a better passer worse than Keontae. But in looking at his stats at 3.6 assists, you got to admit you're surprised that those numbers are not better. Now maybe it's because of Chris Paul, but I was surprised in looking at it because I felt the same way. I thought he was a much better passer than Keontae, but at least based upon the numbers through half a season, it doesn't look that way.
Yeah, I mean Keontae got a lot more minutes at point guard. And then Stephen Castle simply hasn't, and I think that's the big difference in assists. I think if Stephen Castle were getting the same minutes at the point guard spot that Keontae received, I think his assist numbers would exceed Keontae's, just based on what well, what I saw of him at UConn, what I've seen of him so far in his rookie year in San Antonio.
Well, do you think he looks like an NBA player?
Stephen Castle?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Stephen Castle's, I'm high. I'm much more favorable on him than Keontae. Yeah.
Based upon these numbers, and it's a half a season, and I'm going to what one of the things that David Locke said is that he was never high on Castle. Like some of the other people that were, around in his sphere, like Leaf Tulane was like, he was the guy that he thought was the best in the draft class. What Locke was concerned about is showing in his stats so far that he is struggling from the 3-point line. He's struggling to shoot. Now, could he turn that around? Absolutely. I'm not like Locke where, it's forever. If he works hard, he can turn it around. But those issues are there, just like they are with Collier. So let's go to Collier now. So look at Collier versus Keontae George.
Well, the field goal percentage, it favors Keontae, 39.1 versus 38.4, but it's still very close. The 3-point percentage, obviously Collier's 22% versus Keontae's 33%. That's not close. And the free throw percentage, Keontae's 85 versus Collier's 63. That's not close. The assists obviously favor Isaiah, 5.1 versus 4.4, and the turnovers, it's roughly a wash, 2.5 for Keontae, 2.7 for Isaiah. So I think just looking at this, I mean, obviously Keontae is a better shooter than Isaiah Collier at this point. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And there was no doubt about that last year coming in. The one thing that Isaiah clearly can't do at all to this point in his career, although in recent games he seems to be improving a bit. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just he got off such a bad start shooting the basketball from deep. I mean, it was brutal. He's throwing up so many air balls. It was bad.
Yeah, I'm actually going to look at the last 10 for Isaiah Collier because they're much better. And I don't want to make the same mistake that Jazz, that people that really like Keontae last year made, where they just looked at, okay, Keontae's on this upward trend. It's over. He's the man. He's the number one option, blah, 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 all of that. And then he turned down after that because it could be exactly the same with Isaiah, right? I mean, it could be exactly the same. But last 10, 45.7 from the field, 36 from 3, 76.5 from the free throw line, 3.9 rebounds, 8.1 assists, 3.7 turnovers in about 31 minutes a game. So more minutes, but the shooting's got better. And he shot, he nailed a three-pointer tonight. So let's hope that that's a trend that's going to continue, that, he's a 30% three-point shooter so he can work from there. But assist-wise, he clearly, let's face it, assist-wise, not only is the eyeball test, assist-wise, his numbers are already showing in 22 minutes versus 27 for Keontae. He's a much better assist guy than Keontae.
Yeah, Keontae is just not a point guard, and Isaiah is a natural point guard. It's night and day difference. There's no comparison. And by the end of this year, I would expect Collier's field goal percentage to exceed the 39.1 that Keontae George shot last year. I believe that will rise above 39.1 simply because he got off to a really bad start. He's just getting his feet wet in the NBA, trying to figure things out. He's going to get better. He's going to be better by the end of this year. And then from there, he'll continue to improve. It's such a rare exception when a player's numbers don't improve over the first few years of their career. It's rare. So I believe, like I said, that 38.4 will rise above the 39.1 that Keontae shot last year by the end of the year. But the 3-point percentage, he will not hit 33% from the 3-point range this year. He got off, even if he shot 30% the rest of the year, I think that would be, I think that'd be a positive even from this point forward. If he shot 30%, mm-hmm. I think that'd be great for him.
Yeah, agreed. And I think also, Keontae shot 6 3-pointers a game. Now, you and I say that's way too many, but Collier's shooting 1.9, right? So he's taking more wide open shots, etc. And Keontae did take some tough shots. So not only do I think that Keontae is going to shoot a higher 3-point percentage, I think that he took tougher shots, more guarded shots, etc. That again, you and I would say, don't shoot that, but it does affect your field goal percentage. So I think I think Collier will be in the low 40s at the end of it for his field goal percentage, which for a rookie is pretty good. And then he could just work on his 3-point shot, in the off season, hopefully. But assist wise, he's already standing out, and he's standing out versus Castle. Like I know you're saying, like, look, Castle, I see as an eyeball test that he's a great passer. Honestly, at least based on the stats, Collier's stats look better on the passing, but we'll see. I mean, this is like halfway through their first season, so it's really hard to judge completely. This was more like me trying to defend Keontae's and his numbers last year, because relative to a really highly acclaimed guy in Castle, they don't look bad, right? I mean, taking away the defensive, the
Yeah.
defense, which
Yeah.
we
Yeah,
can't discount.
I don't know if Castle's a great passer. I don't know if I would say that, but I think that for his position as a two guard, I think he's a quality above average passer. As a point guard, I don't know. The point guards of today are overall not particularly great adept passers. There's no Stocktons or Nashes and those guys are gone and they're not coming back. So I think Stephen Castle's a decent passer, but he's not the natural point guard that Isaiah Collier is. Isaiah Collier can be well above average in terms of actually running a team. I'm bullish on that part of him. And obviously, Isaiah Collier is still struggling across the board shooting the basketball. I mean, 62.5% for a point guard from a free throw line. That's unacceptable. But I'm not going to, I'm not going to talk down about that. I mean, he's a rookie. He's in his rookie year, first half of the year. So that'll improve. But obviously, at the end, he needs to be in the 80s. Like a point guard has to shoot 80 or above. It's just a necessity.
Honestly, if you don't shoot 80, whatever you're, whether you're a center, point guard, forward, whatever, I don't think you're ever going to be a 3-point shooter. There's some consistency in like who are the fantastic 3-point shooters and who are the good free throw or 3-point and free throw. So I obviously want to have him keep up as well. So one other thing I want to mention, so DeJounte Murray, like, blew out his Achilles.
Mm-hmm.
New Orleans going to tank now. They have one more win than we do. Like, they got to say they have no hope this year. Even with Zion Williamson back. So I think we really have to watch them and their record. So we're still second worst in the league, after today with our 11 wins. But I think New Orleans is at 12. So we're really going to have to watch that one. So even with Zion back, I think we have to be careful. Like, one, they may trade Ingram. Who knows? We'll see. If they trade Ingram, they're really going to be bad. But it wouldn't shock me if they still go into the tank right now because they just realize this season's a bust.
Well, that team should have everybody on the market. McCollum should be on the market. Ingram should be on the market. And quite frankly, if they got a good offer for Zion, that guy should be on the market too.
Yeah.
That team needs an overhaul. It's time to just move on. I'm not convinced that Zion will ever be productive there. Obviously, the whole weight issues thing, like, it's never been resolved. It's still a problem. He never plays. Maybe a relocation will do that guy some good because it's not working in New Orleans. I think all those guys just need to be moved. And there's obviously constant trade rumors about Ingram. And I don't foresee that changing, even if he doesn't get moved by the deadline. Like, that's not going to change. And it's just a disaster. That team is a disaster. Absolutely a disaster.
Yeah, I think the challenge with Ingram is they don't want to pay him the max salary. He wants the max salary. I think you and I would say he's not worth the max salary. We agree with New Orleans. So what do you do in that situation?
Well,
And I think the trouble in finding a trade partner is the trade partners also don't want to pay him,
yeah,
right?
that's the key. Nobody wants to give him a max salary. I
Yeah.
mean, that guy hardly plays any games too. He's missing games all the time. He misses games constantly, and quite frankly, he doesn't maximize the value of his teammates either. He doesn't elevate the play of his teammates. In his mind, Brandon Ingram is an awesome player, but his teammates don't benefit in that way. He's kind of a empty stats guy. He's the epitome of an empty stats guy, and paying that guy a max contract would be suicide. I would not advise anybody to do that if I were in a position to advise teams. That's just ridiculous. And you're right. That's why nobody wants to trade for him.
And we heard the Jazz were interested. Like, who knows? Because I think Danny talks to anybody and sees what's out there and looks for assets he could flip, like he's doing with like John Collins, right? I think that's what he did with Eubanks. But I think the challenge, like you and I, when the reason we didn't want Ingram and he didn't want to come play in the Utah, evidently either, is that, one, we don't like him. Two, we don't want to pay him. Like, that's like the big thing. And honestly, Kuminga was like the same thing with Golden State, right? I'm more bullish on Kuminga than I am with Ingram, even though Ingram's been an all-star. But it's the big risk in taking those guys because they're expecting this big contract. And you say, I'll give you a contract, but it's not that contract, right? I mean, You're maybe a $15 million a year player, but that's what you are. You're not more than that. And that's going to be an issue. So I honestly don't think they're going to get a big package for Ingram. I honestly think they will get a big package for Zion, and I would be the same. Like if that guy plays, he's special. I mean, that guy is amazing in athleticism, etc. If he plays, but that's a big if he plays, and so I would try to get a package for Zion. I would blow the thing up because I think they could get some real assets for Zion, probably a first for some of their other guys, something for Ingram, and then start again.
Yeah, if they can get a haul for him, they need to get the haul, get the draft picks, and move on. That's the bottom line. That's the only thing that makes sense. And it's for all those guys. McCollum, Ingram, Zion, or anybody else on that roster, quite frankly. Get the draft picks, start over. That's the key.
I guess they got some young guys that are good defensive players, right? I'm blanking on their names, but they're like 22, 23.
Yeah.
Hang on to those guys, obviously. But all of the veterans. In Murray, now you can't trade him, but same thing, right? I mean, put Murray on the Lakers or somebody like that and get what you can out of it because maybe he helps them win a few more games. But for New Orleans, I don't understand that trade at all. Like, why'd you bring Murray in? I don't get it.
Yeah, well, I think that guy's value is obviously being diminished because everywhere he goes now, it's not working out. Didn't work out in Atlanta. It didn't work out in New Orleans. Yeah, it's just not working out. So giving him back another big contract after this, I think that's a mistake too. I think that the problem with the NBA is those big contracts. The players expect the big contracts. These rookie guys who are coming off their rookie seasons, they expect these huge contracts. And I think a team, if the guy's not worth it, you're just better off walking away than giving up. I think teams need to face that fact. Just walk. You're better off doing that than and if you think that you're not going to be able to re-sign him, then you need to try and move him before his rookie deal's expired.
Yeah. One I was going to tell you that's in that category too, and I'm not sure I can pick up his contract that fast, is Keldon Johnson got a big contract from San Antonio. And, I like Keldon Johnson. Nothing against Keldon Johnson. But is Keldon Johnson a $100 million a year contract player? I don't think so. Like, a John Collins, what he's playing this year, John Collins is a real NBA player, a really good NBA player. Keldon Johnson, like, I don't know. He's 25 years old. He's undersized at 6'5". What's his contract? Let me see if I can find it quickly. Probably can't find it. Oh, it's not as bad as I thought. I take it back. It's 74 million, 4 years. So it's not bad. It's not terrible. And he's probably worth that. I guess it was who was it? That Devin Vassell that got the big contract for them. And honestly, Devin Vassell is very good. Like you said that Capsel's not a point guard. Then I'm not sure how those two guys are going to play, because you got two guys that are playing off guard, right? Because Vassell is an off guard too.
Yeah. Yeah, the San Antonio obviously needs to find a point guard.
Yeah.
Chris Paul on his last legs.
Eventually, he's going to have to retire.
Yeah.
He's 41 or whatever now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, all right. Anything else for today?
I was going to say, actually, I'll pass it along. One of the things I really love about Isaiah Collier, he just looks tough. He's got this massive neck. I mean, he just looks tough. I mean, I am so excited about Isaiah Collier right now. Man, I hope this guy works on his shot, because I mean, he has some real skills, and I just love his toughness. No, the guy doesn't back down from anybody. So if we lose Colin, we still have Isaiah Collier, and that's like I really like that aspect of it.
Yeah.
Anyhow, that's all I got.
He's a pit bull. He's absolutely a pit bull. He's built like a pit bull.
Yeah. He should be the bull after Colin leaves. And we got another bull to back him up.
Yep. All right. Well, I think we will call that quits for today and call it a wrap. But it was a good day for the Jazz. Big trade, awesome trade, and they did win a game, which is both good and bad, obviously. But overall, I think today was really positive for the Jazz franchise, and we certainly expect more trades over the next week to 10 days.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and keep checking in. Boris is going to be giving you updates through February 6th, and we're going to have some trades, so it's going to be fun. We got one today early, but watch out for our updates on the trades, talking about how they impact the Jazz.
Yep. Well, Anyway, we're going to sign off, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks for watching.